I decided I would make a pie for me and Eddie tonight. I haven't made us any sweets in a while, so this is one of my favorite pies, and I've found out that coconut is one of those things that people either love or they hate. I love coconut, and especially coconut pie. I got this recipe from my Aunt Elsie. She was always so good to all of us. And when my daughter was born, and that'll be 38 years ago this month, my Aunt Elsie brought me a coconut pie. And the name of this recipe is Impossible Coconut Pie. And the minute I tasted it, I knew I had to have the recipe. So I've made it for all these years, and it's still one of our favorites. So let's get started. I've got a half a stick of butter in the pie pan, melting in the oven while I'm preheating the oven to 350 degrees. This is just one of those pies where you just kind of dump everything together. But anytime you've got to mix flour and sugar together and combine it with wet ingredients, I've found that it's always good to combine the flour and sugar first in a separate bowl to get all the lumps out. So it calls for 1.5 cups of sugar. Let me turn you down to see what I'm doing. That was 1 cup of sugar, and then 1/2 cup. All right, now this calls for 1/2 cup of self-rising flour. I'm not quite sure why it would have to be self-rising, but that's what I've always used because that's what my Aunt Elsie told me to use. So that's 1/2 cup of self-rising flour. I'm just going to take a fork and combine that sugar and flour, and what that does, it's kind of a sanding action with the sugar really to get the lumps out of the flour. So just combine that together till you got all of the lumps out. That should be about right. And I'm going to use my batter bowl here, and I'm just going to dump it in. Probably could have just done that in that big bowl to start with. All right. Now, the recipe calls for 4 beaten eggs. I got these beautiful eggs from some friends of mine who have their own chickens. Look at that. So I'm going to use 4 of them. Thank you, Brandy and John. These eggs are wonderful. All right, I got a couple of pieces of shells in there, so I gotta fish that out. So I'm gonna beat those up. Pour it in with the eggs and the flour. And now it calls for 2 cups of milk. Let me get my measuring cup out. So that's 2 cups of milk. Now I'm going to go ahead and stir that up before I put anything else in it. And I'm just using my fork, but you could use a whisk for this. All right. And then it calls for a teaspoon of vanilla. Now I'm using my good homemade vanilla that I make out of vanilla beans soaked in vodka. I'm gonna put just a little bit more than a teaspoon because I love vanilla. All right, and then it calls for 7 ounces of coconut, and that's this whole bag. So let me just open that up. So there goes the whole 7-ounce bag of coconut. And that batter is so thin you wouldn't think it would make a good thick pie, but it is going to be delicious. All right, so I had my butter melting in the pie plate while I was preheating the oven. So there's the butter. Now I'm just going to combine that. And now we just pour it into the pie pan. Now this is supposed to make 2 pies. So I am going to pour that in there, and then I'm going to get another pie pan ready and we'll put it in the oven. Okay, you might have noticed that those beautiful pie plates that I had were a little bit bigger than a normal pie plate and a little bit deeper. So it looks like that pie is only about half full. You also might notice that there's no crust on this pie, and I think that's one of the things I like the most about it. It kind of, it doesn't form a crust, but it kind of tastes like it has a crust when it gets through baking. So I've set our timer for 35 minutes, and we'll come back and see if they're done. Okay, it's time to take these pies out of the oven. Oh my gosh, I wish you could smell. I smell that vanilla. And that is an impossible coconut pie. I'm just going to run a knife around the edge. So let go a little bit while it's hot. Now you can serve this with whipped cream on top if you want to. But I don't like a thing on mine except just pie. This is so hot right now, it probably won't hold together when I cut it. But I wanted to show you the inside. Look at that. That is going to be delicious. I see a cold glass of milk and a piece of pie in my future. You guys have a great evening.